Let's take a look through the international newspapers now with Kyle. Hello, Kyle. Now, starting
Good
off
morning.
with the French newspaper Le Monde, it's just published an exclusive report on the use of chemical weapons, it says, in Syria.
That's right. Le Monde has an exclusive. They've been reporting now for a couple of months, and they've also been looking at the impact of what they believe are chemical attacks. And this is all very early days. There's a lot of uncertainty surrounding these kinds of chemical attacks. But these reporters have been stationed with the Free Syrian Army soldiers, and they're talking about these soldiers being bent double. You know, the effects of these attacks, the watery eyes, the coughing, the suffocating. A litany really of symptoms that they're describing in this piece. And they also describe what it's like on the front lines. The reporter goes on to say that they first see a number of the Syrian government troops stationed, and then suddenly to just retreat, being replaced in certain spots by men in protective suits, who then launch these tiny bombs, what look like bombs or tiny mines. And these are obviously what they believe to be chemical weapons, which then have had not only the immediate physical effects of the combatants on the Syrian Free Army, but also they've kind of had a psychological impact, because a lot of these soldiers now, these fighters, have withdrawn from their particular ranks, and obviously because they're injured, but also others are simply in a state of panic because they don't know what kind of damage this is doing. Some have already succumbed, some have died, and some of the fighters are actually incapacitated, and they don't know whether or when they're going to die.
Now, in the UK, last week's murder of a British soldier has given rise to quite a bit of debate and soul-searching.
Yes, indeed. Now, in The Independent, we have Yasmin Alibi Brown, who has in the past talked about these kinds of events, Islamist attacks. And she says, this is not the first time I'm writing about this, and nor will it be the last. But when is it enough? When do the mainstream critics stop asking for Muslims to denounce the Islamic extremists? That is to say, she says, we have to keep explaining ourselves. We have to, every time there's some kind of lunatic who commits a crime in the name of Islam, we moderates, we normal Muslims all over the world have to somehow line up to condemn this kind of behavior. And she says, the Irish never had to do that when the IRA was launching a series of attacks on the British. She says the white Britons don't have to line up and condemn drone attacks in Afghanistan. Indeed, the kinds of attacks that are being condemned by Muslims, and some extremist Muslims are citing those kinds of examples for the reason behind these kinds of horrific attacks in London.
Now, the Mayor of London takes a different tact in the Telegraph.
Yes, now, predictably, he calls on people to simply be united. He's trying to calm down the rhetoric on both sides. And he's saying, in the Telegraph, we have to distinguish between Islam and Islamism, and we have to be careful. He really takes great pains. He has a number of points, and he just itemizes them in bullet form. And he says, we have to distinguish between the extremists and the moderates, obviously. But also he concludes with an interesting point. He says, we cannot hope to solve this problem of Islamism by simply accepting their invitation to discuss foreign policy. We can't get caught into that yoke.
And that's not the view The Guardian takes, is it?
Well, The Guardian disputes that very point. In fact, they lead off disputing that whole idea that anyone who somehow condemns Western foreign policy and talks about things like drones in Afghanistan is somehow excusing this behavior. It says it's completely wrong-headed to believe we can't do the same, two things at once. It says, to dismiss the enemy as somehow bereft of reason, is like a baby or a squirrel, The Guardian says. If they do things for no reason at all, we can't really hope to defeat them because we won't know what motivates them.
Now, the Daily Mail, it's known for sometimes being a little alarmist. It says Islamists are all over the web.
Yes. Now, this is a pretty interesting article because it says within moments of the attack in London, just dozens, if not hundreds, of pieces were put online, people praising perversely this crime. And the Mail says, can we not get rid of this extremist activity online, which encourages these crazy people, as it puts it? And it says, well, it interviews a couple of people, including the YouTube owner, saying, we cannot take this stuff down, even if it's reprehensible, but also it provides the police with a kind of trace. It allows them to detect the extremists online and actually helps in crime fighting.
And a quick look at... oh, I'm afraid we've run out of time, actually, so we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Carl, for taking us through the international papers.